They laughed because you stayed quiet. They mistook your silence for confusion, your patience for weakness, and your restraint for ignorance. The loudest people in the room always believe they are the smartest, until reality humiliates them. Then, with one move, one decision, one perfectly timed action, you shattered every assumption they ever made about you. Now they're replaying every conversation, wondering how they underestimated someone who was always 10 steps ahead. Intelligence doesn't beg for attention. It waits. It watches. It strikes when the moment is right. Today, you're about to discover why your greatest advantage was never what you said. It was what you refused to reveal. People have been conditioned to believe that intelligence announces itself. They expect the smartest person in the room to be the loudest voice, the quickest answer, the one constantly proving a point. That illusion has trapped countless people into revealing everything they know before the game has even begun. You chose a different path. Whether intentionally or through experience, you learned that silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people expose themselves. While others rushed to explain, defend, and impress, you observed. Every unnecessary word they spoke became another piece of information you collected. Every insult they threw revealed their insecurities. Every attempt to provoke you exposed their emotional weaknesses. Without realizing it, they were handing you the blueprint of their minds. Silence is uncomfortable for people who depend on controlling the narrative. They need reactions. They need validation. They need you to argue so they can predict your next move. When you refuse to participate in their script, they become restless. They begin filling the empty space with assumptions, and assumptions are dangerous because they are rarely based on truth. They convince themselves you lacked confidence because you didn't interrupt. They believed you lacked intelligence because you weren't showing off. They mistook calmness for confusion. The irony is that the less you explained yourself, the more they revealed about themselves. There is an invisible power in restraint. Anyone can react. Anyone can lose control when challenged. It takes discipline to remain composed while people underestimate you. That discipline forces others into a psychological trap. Human beings naturally project their own thinking onto others. If someone constantly seeks attention, they assume everyone else does too. If they manipulate people, they assume everyone plays the same game. When they encounter someone who refuses to follow those patterns, their ability to predict disappears. Suddenly, they aren't dealing with the version of you they imagined. They're dealing with a mystery, and mystery unsettles people far more than open conflict ever could. Notice how often people expose their true intentions simply because they think you aren't paying attention. They gossip freely around the person they believe has no influence. They reveal secrets to the one they consider harmless. They speak carelessly because they've already decided you don't matter. In reality, every careless sentence becomes valuable information. You discover alliances, hidden motives, personal fears, and weaknesses without asking a single question. They believe they're dominating the situation, while they're unknowingly providing you with everything you need to understand the entire landscape. Patience transforms silence into strategy. Most people cannot wait. Their emotions demand immediate action. They respond to every criticism, every insult, every misunderstanding. In doing so, they surrender control. You resisted that temptation. Instead of chasing approval, you allowed time to expose reality. False accusations eventually collapse under their own contradictions. Fake confidence eventually cracks under pressure. Arrogance eventually overestimates itself. The longer you remained patient, the clearer everyone's true character became. You didn't need to expose them because they eventually exposed themselves. There is also a deeper reason silence becomes intimidating. It removes predictability. Predictable people are easy to manipulate because their reactions are automatic. Say the right insult, and they become angry. Offer enough praise, and they become dependent. Create enough fear, and they surrender. But when someone cannot predict your emotional response, they lose leverage. They begin questioning themselves instead of controlling you. Every unanswered message, every calm expression, every refusal to argue creates uncertainty inside the very people who wanted certainty. Many confuse silence with passivity, but they couldn't be more different. Passive people avoid conflict because they fear consequences. Strategic people choose silence because they understand timing. There is an enormous difference. One is surrender, the other is preparation. While others waste energy trying to win every small battle, you conserve yours for the moments that truly matter. History consistently rewards those who know when to act rather than those who simply act the fastest. Think about a master chess player. The strongest move is rarely the first one that appears exciting. Sometimes the greatest advantage comes from waiting, allowing the opponent to grow overconfident. Confidence without awareness creates mistakes. The more certain people become that they've already figured you out, the less cautious they become. They stop paying attention. They underestimate possibilities. They become careless with decisions because they've convinced themselves there is no real threat. That false confidence becomes the opening they've unknowingly created for you. Your silence also protected your growth. Had you constantly announced every goal, every lesson, every improvement, you would have invited endless opinions from people who never intended to see you succeed. Instead, you evolved quietly. While they remained distracted by appearances, you invested in knowledge, discipline, emotional control, and experience. Growth doesn't require an audience. In fact, some of the greatest transformations happen when nobody is watching. People often celebrate potential more than progress, but true progress happens behind closed doors, beyond applause, beyond recognition. Eventually, reality reaches a point where it cannot remain hidden. Skills become visible, results become undeniable. Decisions begin producing outcomes that no one expected. The same people who ignored you now struggle to explain how someone they dismissed suddenly became impossible to overlook. They search for shortcuts, secret advantages, or lucky breaks because accepting the truth would force them to confront their own flawed judgment. It is easier for them to invent explanations than admit they completely misunderstood the person standing in front of them. Everyone reaches a moment when preparation collides with opportunity. It looks sudden to the outside world, but nothing about it is accidental. The world only notices the move you make today because it never paid attention to the countless hours, failures, observations, and lessons that shaped you yesterday. People love calling success an overnight miracle because it allows them to ignore the years of discipline hiding behind one unforgettable decision. When your defining moment arrived, they believed you acted on impulse. They had no idea they were witnessing the final piece of a strategy that had been developing for far longer than they could imagine. For a long time, they underestimated you because they measured intelligence by appearances instead of outcomes. They believed confidence had to be loud. They believed capability needed constant advertisement. While they were busy collecting attention, you were collecting experience. Every mistake became a lesson. Every setback sharpened your judgment. Every disappointment strengthened your patience. You weren't trying to impress anyone because your focus was never on looking powerful. Your focus was becoming powerful. There comes a point when one decision changes everything, not because the decision itself is magical, but because it reveals everything people failed to notice before. Imagine spending years studying patterns while everyone assumes you're distracted. Then, at exactly the right moment, you make a move so precise that every prediction about you instantly collapses. That's what surprises people. They're not shocked by your success alone. They're shocked that their understanding of you was completely wrong from the beginning. The bold move wasn't reckless. It was calculated. Reckless people chase excitement without understanding consequences. Calculated people understand every possible outcome before they act. That's why your decision appeared fearless. Confidence doesn't come from ignoring risks. It comes from knowing you've already prepared for them. While others hesitated because they feared failure, you stepped forward because you had already accepted uncertainty as part of growth. The difference between courage and carelessness is preparation. Psychologically, people become trapped by their first impression of someone. Once they label a person as average, quiet, weak, or incapable, they subconsciously ignore evidence that contradicts their belief. This is why your breakthrough felt impossible to them. They weren't just watching your actions. They were filtering your actions through outdated assumptions. Even when you showed signs of growth, they dismissed them as coincidence. When your success became undeniable, their mental picture of you shattered all at once. That single action forced everyone to rethink every interaction they'd ever had with you. Suddenly, your silence looked intentional instead of awkward. Your patience looked disciplined instead of passive. Your confidence looked earned instead of hidden. What they once interpreted as weakness now appeared as extraordinary self-control. Nothing about you changed overnight. Only their perspective did. Many people spend their lives trying to convince others they're intelligent. Ironically, the need for constant validation often weakens real influence. Truly capable individuals don't argue with every opinion because they understand that results speak a language louder than explanations ever could. You reached a point where proving people wrong became unnecessary. Your actions carried the message more effectively than your words ever could. One intelligent decision has the power to erase years of misunderstanding. Think about inventors whose ideas were mocked until they worked. Think about athletes overlooked until one championship performance changed public opinion forever. Think about entrepreneurs rejected dozens of times before building something impossible to ignore. Society often laughs first and applauds later because it struggles to recognize potential before it becomes visible. The fascinating part is how quickly people rewrite history after witnessing success. Those who doubted you suddenly claim they always believed in you. Those who ignored your potential begin telling stories about how they saw something special all along. This happens because admitting they underestimated you would require them to confront their own poor judgment. Instead of accepting responsibility, they adjust the narrative to protect their pride. Your bold move also exposed the difference between spectators and builders. Spectators criticize because they risk nothing. Builders understand that every meaningful achievement requires uncertainty. The people laughing from the sidelines never have to face the possibility of failure because they never enter the arena. Meanwhile, those willing to make difficult decisions develop resilience that observers can never fully understand. Intelligence isn't measured by how much information you possess. It's measured by your ability to recognize the right moment to apply that information. Timing transforms ordinary knowledge into extraordinary impact. Acting too early wastes opportunity. Acting too late loses momentum. The people who succeed consistently understand that wisdom is knowing not only what to do, but exactly when to do it. When your defining moment arrived, everything aligned. Your preparation met opportunity. Your patience met purpose. Your confidence met action. What looked like one bold decision to everyone else was actually the visible result of hundreds of invisible choices made long before anyone was paying attention. Every quiet lesson, every disciplined habit, every moment you refused to quit had been leading toward that single unforgettable move. And once it happened, There was no way for anyone to continue pretending they had you figured out, because the person they thought they understood no longer existed in the story they had created about you. The strongest minds rarely feel the need to announce themselves. They understand that once people know exactly what you can do, they immediately begin preparing ways to limit you. The moment your intelligence becomes obvious, expectations change, competition increases, and hidden resistance starts to appear. That is why truly perceptive people don't rush to display everything they know. They recognize that information is a form of power, and power loses much of its advantage when it is carelessly exposed. Remaining underestimated for a while often creates opportunities that would never exist if everyone recognized your full potential from the beginning. Many people mistake constant talking for wisdom. They believe that the person dominating every conversation must naturally be the smartest in the room. In reality, excessive talking often reveals more than it conceals. Every opinion, every emotional reaction, and every unnecessary explanation gives observant people insight into your thinking. Meanwhile, the person who listens carefully gains knowledge from everyone without exposing much about themselves. While others compete to be heard, the quiet observer is collecting patterns, motives, strengths, and weaknesses that eventually become valuable advantages. Real intelligence understands that not every battle deserves attention. There is an enormous difference between having something to prove and having nothing to prove. Those desperate for recognition argue over every criticism because their identity depends on being right. Confident thinkers understand that winning every argument is meaningless if it distracts them from winning at life. They conserve energy for challenges that actually influence their future, rather than wasting it on temporary victories that satisfy nothing more than pride. One of the greatest psychological advantages comes from allowing people to underestimate you. The moment someone assumes they already know your limits, they stop paying close attention. Their curiosity disappears. Their caution weakens. They become comfortable, and comfort often produces mistakes. Overconfidence convinces people they no longer need to prepare because they believe they've already figured you out. That false certainty becomes the opening through which unexpected success quietly enters. Think about how often people reveal themselves when they believe you're incapable. They speak more freely, become less guarded, and expose intentions they would otherwise hide. They assume you're too distracted to notice details or too inexperienced to understand deeper meanings. In truth, your silence gives you access to information that louder personalities rarely receive. They are too busy proving themselves to recognize what everyone else is unintentionally revealing. Patience is another hallmark of genuine intelligence. Most individuals want immediate rewards, immediate validation, and immediate recognition. They become frustrated when progress feels invisible. Smarter minds accept that meaningful growth usually happens long before visible results appear. A tree develops an extensive root system before anyone admires its height. Likewise, character, discipline, and wisdom strengthen quietly beneath the surface until circumstances finally reveal what has been developing all along. People often confuse speed with effectiveness. They admire quick decisions without asking whether those decisions are correct. Intelligent people understand that a delayed answer based on careful thought is often more valuable than an immediate response driven by emotion. Taking time to analyze situations prevents unnecessary mistakes. It allows emotions to settle and logic to lead. While impulsive individuals spend their time repairing damage created by rushed choices, disciplined thinkers avoid much of that damage altogether. There is also strength in resisting the temptation to seek approval. Approval is unpredictable because it depends on opinions you cannot control. If your confidence relies on applause, Criticism will destroy your motivation. Intelligent individuals build confidence from competence instead. Every new skill mastered, every lesson learned, and every challenge overcome creates internal certainty that doesn't disappear simply because someone disagrees with them. External validation becomes optional rather than essential. History repeatedly demonstrates this principle. Many groundbreaking thinkers, inventors, artists, and innovators were dismissed long before they were celebrated. Society often rejects unfamiliar ideas because accepting them requires abandoning comfortable beliefs. The people who eventually transform industries rarely spend their energy convincing everyone they're right. Instead, they continue refining their work until reality becomes impossible to deny. Their success becomes the argument they never needed to make with words. Keeping your full intelligence hidden doesn't mean pretending to be less capable forever. It means understanding that every environment deserves a different version of your abilities. Not everyone has earned access to your deepest insights, your best strategies, or your biggest ambitions. Sharing everything with everyone only invites unnecessary criticism, jealousy, and interference. Selective transparency protects your focus while allowing your results to speak when the timing is appropriate. When people finally realize what you're truly capable of, their reaction is rarely admiration at first. It is disbelief. They begin replaying old conversations, searching for clues they somehow missed. Suddenly, moments they ignored become meaningful. Decisions they dismissed appear brilliant in hindsight. Your quiet confidence starts making sense, and the patience they once criticized begins looking like extraordinary discipline. They wonder how they overlooked something that now feels obvious, failing to understand that genuine intelligence was never trying to be seen. It was busy becoming undeniable, while everyone else remained distracted by appearances and noise, unaware that the greatest minds often move in silence, until the moment their actions permanently rewrite every assumption that came before. Being underestimated feels like an insult when you first experience it. People dismiss your ideas before hearing them. They overlook your potential because it doesn't fit their expectations. They assume your quiet nature means weakness, your kindness means naivety, or your patience means fear. At first, it is tempting to fight every misunderstanding, to correct every false assumption, and to force people to recognize your worth. But there comes a moment when you realize something extraordinary. Their low expectations are not a prison, they are an advantage. The less people expect from you, the less prepared they are for what you eventually become. Most individuals spend enormous amounts of energy trying to manage other people's opinions. They adjust their personalities to gain approval, exaggerate achievements to earn respect, and constantly explain themselves to avoid being misunderstood. Unfortunately, that approach places your confidence in someone else's hands. The moment their approval disappears, so does your sense of certainty. True psychological strength begins when your focus shifts away from controlling perceptions and toward developing undeniable capability. Once your results become visible, opinions lose their ability to define you. There is a hidden freedom that comes with being underestimated. Expectations become lighter. Pressure decreases. While everyone is watching the obvious competitors, you are quietly building momentum without attracting unnecessary resistance. History has shown that the greatest breakthroughs often come from the people nobody considered dangerous. Their opponents overlooked them, their critics ignored them, their competitors laughed at them. That laughter became the distraction that allowed preparation to continue unnoticed. Human psychology naturally encourages people to create shortcuts when judging others. Instead of continuously reevaluating someone, the brain forms quick conclusions based on first impressions. Once those conclusions settle, they become surprisingly difficult to change. If someone first saw you during a period of struggle, they often continue viewing you through that outdated version long after you've transformed. They don't see the countless books you've read, the discipline you've developed, the habits you've changed, or the resilience you've earned. They're responding to a memory rather than the person standing in front of them today. This creates an incredible opportunity. While they remain attached to an outdated image of you, you continue evolving. Every challenge teaches you something new. Every disappointment strengthens emotional control. Every failure refines your judgment. You are no longer competing against the person they remember. You are competing against the version of yourself that existed yesterday. That is the only competition that truly matters. Turning underestimation into an advantage requires emotional discipline. It is natural to feel angry when people fail to recognize your value, but anger often leads to impulsive decisions that satisfy emotion while damaging long-term progress. Emotional discipline allows you to remain focused despite disrespect. Instead of reacting to every insult, you invest that energy into growth. Instead of arguing with doubters, you develop skills that eventually silence doubt without a single explanation. Quiet progress becomes more satisfying than loud revenge because it produces lasting results instead of temporary satisfaction. Another powerful psychological principle is that surprise creates impact. If everyone expects greatness from you, your achievements often feel ordinary. But when people believe you are incapable, even a single remarkable accomplishment forces them to completely reconsider everything they thought they knew. Their mental picture collapses. Suddenly, they begin questioning not only their opinion of you, but also their ability to judge people accurately. One breakthrough can erase years of misunderstanding because reality is impossible to argue with forever. There is also wisdom in understanding that not everyone deserves access to your plans. Many dreams have been weakened by premature exposure. The moment you announce every ambition, you invite opinions from people who neither understand your vision nor share your commitment. Some discourage you because of their own fears. Others become jealous before you've even succeeded. Keeping your goals private allows them to mature without unnecessary interference. Seeds grow underground before anyone admires the tree. In the same way, meaningful transformation often happens away from public attention. Confidence becomes different when it no longer depends on recognition. Instead of asking whether people believe in you, you begin asking whether your actions align with your purpose. Instead of measuring success by applause, you measure it by progress. Every small improvement becomes proof that your future is being built, regardless of who notices. This internal confidence cannot be taken away by criticism because it wasn't created by praise in the first place. Ironically, the same people who once underestimated you often become your loudest admirers after witnessing your success. They speak as though your greatness was always obvious. They claim they knew you would succeed all along. This shift rarely happens because they suddenly understand you. It happens because visible results are easier to believe than invisible potential. Society frequently doubts possibility until possibility becomes reality. The greatest transformation isn't that other people finally recognize your intelligence. The greatest transformation is that you no longer need them to. Their opinions become background noise instead of guiding principles. You stop chasing validation and start chasing mastery. You stop reacting to disrespect and start responding with excellence. Every setback becomes training instead of defeat. Every obstacle becomes another opportunity to strengthen your character. The person who once felt overlooked gradually becomes someone impossible to ignore, not because they demanded attention, but because consistent discipline, emotional control, and relentless self-improvement eventually created a level of excellence that no amount of doubt, criticism, or underestimation could ever conceal again.